Now welcome to another lightning response video where this time it's kind of a response to a response I've already given, or perhaps I should say a longer, hopefully better answer than the short one I gave to the initial question. Anyway, I'm just going to read the new question and we'll get right into it, and it comes to us from Severitus, who asked, "Hey Thor, I appreciate you responding to my comment, especially given how many comments you receive across your videos. I agree that the current default of the Sith is that they are based on selfishness, and that's part of the point of the Jedi versus Sith dynamic. The change to the formula I am asking for from the franchise goes hand in hand with not having the Sith always be imperialist or fascist, meaning that, for example, you could have Sith who are still individualistic and somewhat self-serving overall, but are genuinely loyal to friends and family and don't backstab loved ones in the quest for power. Anakin Skywalker, Count Dooku, and Yuthura Ban from KOTOR are all good examples of people who joined the Sith for good ends but got caught up in the urge to have power for power's sake. The cautionary tales are excellent, but I long to see someone like that actually succeed. I guess where I'm going with this is if Luke Skywalker can tap into the dark side to defeat Darth Vader and then stop in the next moment and give Darth Sidious the middle finger, something that flies in the face of Yoda's claim that if you start down the dark path, forever will it dominate your destiny. I feel like it would not only be fair, but really cool to see a Sith who pursues the dark side for good ends, overcomes the Sith's history of being consumed by the lust for power, if at the very least to keep Star Wars fresh and interesting." Alright, so first of all here, thank you for the follow-up question. I do really enjoy this topic and don't mind going a little deeper into it than I did the first time. And I do think I know or understand what you're getting at or asking here. I think you're basically wanting a little more complexity out of, say, the Sith, and once they go dark side, they become all super bad guys who want to rule the galaxy. And in a sense, they forget about or stop caring about the things that kind of led them to fall in the first place, which does initially seem a little odd. And though, yes, I'm with you, don't take my response here as a personal attack. I'm certainly with you that I wouldn't mind from time to time seeing Star Wars give us a little different angle with Darksiders than just, I want conquest and nothing more. I think one of the reasons why Baylan Skoll from Ahsoka has me intrigued is because he seems to be a Darksider that has perhaps some different motivations or agenda, though we'll have to wait and see what they ultimately do with him. But anyway, I do believe you kind of begin to answer your own question here when you point out how someone like Anakin Skywalker, for example, how he essentially fell for not the wrong reasons, he just wanted to save his wife, but that he ultimately and very quickly got caught up in the urge for power's sake, which is just the fate of all who use the dark side, because the nature of the dark side is selfishness. So once you start using it, once you embrace the very epitome of selfishness, an actual tangible and very real epitome of it, the dark side does exist in Star Wars. It's not this abstract or metaphorical thing or anything like that. So once you start using it, you become the embodiment of it, no matter what reason you may have started to use it in the first place. And, as you rightfully point out, it is a cautionary tale. It is intentionally done this way or designed this way in order to begin to teach us a lesson about how miserable a life devoted only to the self is or can be. How when all you care about is yourself, you can only see everyone else as an enemy who takes what you have or has what you deserve. Which is something George Lucas has talked a lot about. That pleasure, which he describes as kind of getting things you want or doing for yourself, that it's very fleeting and leaves you only craving more afterwards, while joy, which comes from helping others, is much longer lasting and more satisfying in the end. And furthermore, when it comes to using the dark side and how easy it is to lose yourself to it, I think the best comparison you can use, and this was given to me years ago now in the comments of a video shortly after I started on YouTube, and by someone who has long since become a good friend. One of the reasons I do try and read the vast majority of comments I get, and why I respond to them and do videos like this one, is because, as I've even said before, I've learned far more about Star Wars from talking with other people about it, seeing their perspective on it, than I have from just quietly pondering it all by myself. Anyway, again, I do see your perspective and what you're asking for, but falling to the dark side is a lot like being addicted to drugs. That was the example my friend gave. It's something that unless you've been there, unless you've experienced it, you can never fully understand what it's like. And I don't think anyone who starts using drugs ever thinks to themselves, I'm going to become addicted to this and lose a part of myself, or maybe my whole self to it. I don't think anyone who starts using imagines they will potentially hurt people they care about, or get so low they'll steal from the people they love in order to get their fix, and yet that happens, right? The same way Anakin never imagined he could become so consumed by the dark side that he'd choke out Padme, who was the reason he started to use it in the first place. He started to use it again for the right reasons, you could kind of argue. And yet that's exactly what he did. And when he did, he blamed someone else instead of ever looking inward at what he was becoming. And I mean, yeah, no one starts using the dark side thinking they're going to become a slave to it. They all think they'll be able to use it and control it in order to get what they want, or they just don't fully understand what they're even getting themselves into. And as Yoda says, the dark side isn't stronger, it's just easier. It's a shortcut. It's the difference between earning something the right way and just taking it. Anakin basically saw it as a power he could learn in order to save the one he loved. But it's not that simple. It's not something you can ever truly control, but rather something that always ends up controlling you, always. As again, Yoda said, once you start down the dark path, forever will it dominate your destiny, and that it will consume you. And no, that doesn't mean that it literally can never, ever, under any circumstance, be resisted or that you can't come back from it once you start. People, of course, recover from addictions in the real world all the time, and as we also know, Anakin was able to break away from the dark side to return to the light and save his son in Return of the Jedi. But just because he had resisted the dark side and come back from it does not mean he had truly conquered it. It's not like he could now freely use it without consequences. He could easily fall back into it if not careful, if not always vigilant. The same way a real-world addict must always be cautious. It's not like you overcome your addiction to drugs and then can use drugs freely because you overcame it. If you do that, you're just going to fall right back into old habits. And speaking of Luke, who you also brought up, he was one step away from falling to the dark side in Return of the Jedi. Him looking at his father's missing hand and then at his own mechanical hand that had been sliced off by his dad, was him realizing that if I kill my father in anger, if I let the rage inside me dictate my actions, that's it for me. I become that rage and become him. He was one step away from disaster, one step away from becoming the Emperor's next apprentice, one step away from becoming a Sith because that's what Sith are. They are the result of falling to the dark side, not something or someone that simply uses the dark side for whatever means they may want to use it for. Which is what I was kind of trying to say in that initial response, that it's not like virtually anyone decides I'm going to become a Sith so I can use the dark side to do good things. Keeping in mind the dark side doesn't lead to more power, it just leads to easier power. And that again, falling to the dark side is something that happens to you. In many ways, it is kind of the opposite of becoming a Jedi, which requires a very conscious effort and dedication. Being a Jedi is a hard life because it requires sacrifice. It requires the opposite of what being a Sith requires. Though that said, being a Jedi is also basically the result of your dedication, not something you can just declare yourself as despite not following the ideals of it. And once you stop following them, you're not a Jedi anymore. Not unlike how you can't eat animal products and call yourself a vegan. Rather, you are a vegan because you don't eat animal products. And so, though, again, I'm all for different types of villains and Force users in Star Wars, and I get the desire to see different types of Sith. I'm not trying to argue against you, as much as I guess I'm more arguing semantics here in a way. But a Sith is simply someone who serves the dark side. That is what they are. They are someone who has become so selfish that they simply cannot think of others anymore, even if the reason they fell to the dark side was to try and save someone. Or at the very least, that's the idea that George Lucas has set forth for them. And yeah, I do get that there's even more than that to being a official Sith. It's not that simple. There is the rule of two and all of these other things, and that even with all this being the case, there's no doubt more that could be done with or explained in regards or explored in regards to the Sith, which I'm, again, all for. But hopefully what I'm doing here is explaining myself or where I'm coming from or why I feel the way I do about the Sith-Jedi dichotomy. That the dark side cannot simply be looked at as something to be used for the right reasons when it should never be the answer to anything because of what it represents and inevitably leads to. You can't use the dark side for good things, not for long, because it will consume you, it will change you, it will change your very nature to its own selfishness. And to imply that it can be something good, for better or worse here, that goes against the message of Star Wars that George Lucas was going for. Well, that's all I got for you this time. Now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about all this, or if you'd like to see a bit more and different done with those who use the dark side. Or you can always ask a question for a future lightning response video. Just start your comment off with "Hey Thor" and then ask away. But whatever you choose to do, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.